Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Hey. All right, we are good to go. Call the advisory committee meeting to order at 7:35 p.m. All present except for Marcy. All right, let me pull up my agenda. All right. I had a chance to look at the minutes that Claire just sent over. I didn't have too many edits, but did anybody else have a chance to do it? Does it feel comfortable voting on them, or should we wait till either Saturday or our next meeting?
I did not look at them.
All right, let's just.
I didn't look at them.
All right,
I'm
let's just push
halfway
them off.
through, so let's push them until Saturday if we can.
Let's push them to Saturday, or even we can do them past then. I think at the end of the world, we'll just load a draft. Okay. Update on meeting schedule. So we have a meeting on Saturday. Obviously, that's going to be a big one. Process and outlook. Again, we're going through all the main. You guys have the schedule from Mark, so you have all the different meetings that we're looking to have. Current budget is at 5.38. By my calculation, not theirs. I think I'm about 8% year over year with the 16% change. But we can dig into those numbers in detail. That part. You guys all saw the draft warrant from Mark, so I think we can when we get closer to town meeting. But I think start to dig into reading that and seeing what's on there and kind of what it all means. And I think there's been some good articles online to talk about them as well. So far, nothing too crazy. I think there might be some citizens petitions coming. Have you heard any more, Tim?
I think there are definitely citizen petitions coming.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure.
All right. So I think since our last meeting, Tim, we met with IT, right?
Yes.
Do you have any notes you want to cover off on that? I have a couple written down, but nothing crazy.
No, I'll let you take the notes.
All right, let me just pull up their budget. Give me a second. And this meeting is not going to be too long, guys. It's mostly just to cover off on next steps and make sure we're okay for this weekend.
Yeah, Andrew, what's maybe this is on the agenda to sort of just make sure we're prepared for going in for Saturday. Is there anything you could provide as far as how that's going to go and what maybe the format will be, and what do we need other than looking at the spreadsheet? Is there anything we need to do to prepare?
I think if you've met with the people or you've at least gone through the budget and kind of especially the ones that if you were liaison to, just kind of getting a rough idea for have some questions prepared if we haven't reviewed them all. I think the outstanding ones that we haven't reviewed as liaisons will be there, so that's we can kind of kill them two birds with one stone then. So I think basically it's just an opportunity for us to ask our questions if we haven't yet, or if there were any outstanding questions from after we discussed like what the liaison meetings were like and what we covered off on.
Sorry, if I should note.
Formal.
Are we having a pre-meeting with the select board?
You mean, Tim?
Are we meeting with the select board beforehand by any chance?
Like that day, you mean?
Yeah, I just kind of want to get a sense of, do we need to have a conversation with them about financial policy? What we set weeks ago, whether it's still valid, if changes have been made. I think it's a good short conversation to have, even, doesn't have to be a separate meeting, but before we start diving into a lot of budgets, I think everybody should be on the same page in terms of what we're expecting, level service, or what have you.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. I can mention to Kathy, just make sure we have the rules of the road. I think they brought it up in one of their last meetings, with Mark, to make sure that it's level service, and anything that goes above and beyond that is off to the side. And we discussed those things separately. I think there's a threshold there, a few $100s here, a few $1,000s there, probably isn't going to be, warrant its own separate article item. But I think that was kind of, that message was received. But I think, to your point, I think we should set a ground rule for the day of what our expectations are, what we're trying to get to. I know we've also been talking about, like, what is our target? Are we trying to get the budget below 5? Are we trying to get the budget below 4? What appetite is there for cuts, versus, et cetera. So, but I think that's something we can kind of start in the morning, hit off before we get to our first budget. Let me throw this up. So this is there's two different budgets from IT. This is the one with the managed service provider increase, which is, a larger increase than last year. The GIS one was a new provider, right, Tim? So it was a new provider, but in theory, it might end up saving us some money because the annual service contract is cheaper, and we might not need to spend.
It's doubled up.
Yeah, so it's doubled up. We might not. So it's basically, we're switching providers. There's a migration fee. The annual cost is less, but this number here, the 17,900, includes what we currently pay plus the 10,000, which is a portion of $3,500 operating cost, and $6,500 is the migration. So it's a lower operating cost, and he included the 7,900 because he's not sure contractually where will we be at when we migrate it over, and whether or not we'll have to pay that, the current software price. So that's what that thing. But so it's kind of a revenue generating, sort of, because in the end it'll cost us less on an ongoing basis, but there's just a large jump this year, which may be 10,000, which is again the 3,500 operating cost instead of the 7,900, and we might not need to pay the 7,900, but he included it just to be safe in case we have to pay it. And this will give us an upgraded and better GIS system.
It's also, with the MSP comes not just better support and service, but also subject matter expertise in all matters GIS, which is difficult to maintain within the town.
And it's moved to the cloud too. The GIS would be in the cloud, which would be good. The regular salaries is again below because of what they had budgeted last year versus what Hassan's salary came in at. So no real questions there. The big number you're going to see here is the increase in contracted services, which we dig over into this spreadsheet. Sorry. Is mostly due to, there's the line item, $32,000 for a managed services provider. This is like backup support. And I think Jay is one of the people that are coming on Saturday, but it's, so if Jay or Hassan aren't available, we have somebody that can step in. It's time materials, but it's kind of a backup for what they need.
This will allow Jay to focus on some of the bigger ticket items that we've been talking about. We have Jay, we have a backup on site rather than hiring additional staff. We have money for contracted services to handle some of the day-to-day things to get it off Jay's plate.
Is that a person or is that remote?
A consulting company. I think they're remote.
They would be remote
No, just dialing in as needed.
or on-site as needed, depending on the service. Right, so if, I would imagine one of the things Jay's gonna offload would be the depot service. So if a new employee starts, where does their laptop come from? Who images it? Who sets it up?
Right.
Who trains them on it, right? So that would be partially off-site. And then it would either be shipped with remote training or they would have to come on-site for a day. I'm not certain about that, Howard.
And jump back up on the GIS. What do we get in our GIS system? What is it doing?
So have you been to the one we currently have?
Nope.
So just, all the GIS maps.
Yeah, maps actually, yes. So the location, property
Right.
lines, that kind of stuff. So
And I think there's some more layers that we just got a impervious surface layer that we need to layer on there, and then the new road software, whatever we call it, the road maintenance software that we just acquired also has GIS information, so they can load that in to do better calculations. So it's basically upgrading our current system to a more robust one that allows us to do more things and actually costs less to run, and then it moves to the cloud. So.
Hey, Andrew, is this the one where we're going to see a similar line item in the assessors because they have a different module?
Yes.
So I just want people to be aware it's not a duplication. It's actually separate modules and they will communicate. So there will be some efficiencies there.
so it's one system, but we're breaking up the cost because the module is going to the people it's associated to.
I'm not exactly certain, Howard, why the other module is not in the IT budget. Maybe in the future, it will be consolidated here.
Okay. Do you remember, off the top of your head, do you remember what that other module costs?
I want to say 3,500.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a total cost of what a new GIS system, is this the year to do it? It sounds like long-term it is, but. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of those, you rip the band-aid. When do you rip the band-aid off if it's a good decision in the long term,
Okay.
Yeah. Trying to think what else.
How much was the managed services total? Is it just an
32,000? 32,000.
And is that a flat fee and it's just?
I think it's just time materials.
I think it's an SOW amount and then they'll bill off of it.
Right, but is it a not to exceed number or is that just an estimate and they can go over?
I think it's a not to exceed and
yeah.
And I think Jay had sent around the detailed SOW that I can send around to the committee.
Okay.
To answer any other questions. All right. Any more questions on? That's the main culprits there.
Andrew, did we ask Jay to pull out everything that wasn't level service?
We did, I think. Well, that's kind of what he did with the MSP versus non-MSP budgets.
Oh.
But I think the GIS, he didn't because he's kind of like, it is the same service. You're just changing vendors.
Got it.
That's one of those where it's like, if we don't spend the 7,900, we're talking a difference of 3,000, right? And does that warrant, if it's the same service, you're just switching vendors, does that warrant a whole separate thing? I don't know. The managed services for sure, right? That should be a discussion on whether or not we think we need that or not, but there's some little pieces in here. Okay. Marcy's not able to join, but we did talk to Karen before she left on her budget. Let me just bring that up.
And will there be any changes based on her replacement, or we just, he's stuck with what she did?
No, I mean, I think there's always, I think there's an interim one DPW head that I think is they're gonna come, or somebody's gonna come to talk about their budget, but, I think salaries didn't really change much, with the exception of they put in a bigger number for Karen's position salary, which is why you see an increase. Whether or not, what salary the new person has yet, they haven't determined that, but they just kind of put in a market rate salary to make sure it was in the budget. One thing I brought up was there's a big increase in irrigation water, mostly because the fields that we just redid require more, water to keep them nicer than some of the old fields where they usually just watered them, to make sure they didn't die. I asked Karen if we could look at trying to do an irrigation well on maybe one or two of them to see if that helps. I have one at my house, and I save a lot of money by doing that.
I'm kind of curious why this cost isn't built back into the fees for the fields. It's maintenance.
Should be, but again, the fees from the field go into the revolving account, where they should be charged back to.
Oh, yeah, right. But
Yeah.
I guess that maybe that's my point. Maybe that's a better point. Why isn't this in the revolving account?
Yeah, we should allocate certain costs to the revenue generating centers. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
But my thing too is whether it's in there or not, I think $32,000 is a lot to spend on water. When especially some of our fields like Calendar or some of the other ones are basically in a swamp, and getting water shouldn't be that difficult. This was an interesting one, is for employee training. They changed the mass laws or mass rules or whatever, that a truck driver needs to be trained at a actual commercial truck driving school. So when they hired a new truck driver, they used to do it on site and have staff do it. So this is an approximate cost to send them to one of those trucking schools, but they're trying to figure out if there's a way around it or not.
Why wouldn't you hire someone that already has a Class A license?
Yes.
It's difficult. They've been advertising for one, I think, for 6 months.
I mean, I respectfully, I've seen a theme with some of the other departments as well. We'll talk about that on Saturday, but we've seen you paying as a town a lot of money to train people, whether it's training a truck driver, get his Class A, or I think the fire department has in there that we actually are paying for them to go to college.
Well, police, the last 3, 4 policemen, we paid for them to go to the academy, and then we pay for them to do their training here. Same with dispatch.
Yeah, some of it's also a little bit of a chicken or egg thing, like with truck drivers. If they need to be trained at a school and they can't afford that themselves, they sort of have to get hired first and then get trained. So I know there's a shortage of truck drivers, so that could also.
And I think it's also a little bit, if you find somebody with a Class A, maybe you're paying them a higher salary, so it's kind of a wash. But I don't know. This is coming from Karen in terms of why that.
I guess I worry that if you train them as a Class A and then they leave, go somewhere else with the Class A to get that higher salary, now we paid to give them that. Is there any kind of
there should be a
required retention?
We should see is there should be either retention or a clawback, right?
Yeah,
But is there?
I would doubt it.
Right, and that's the point.
I think there is for our tuition reimbursement policy, but do we consider this in that bucket? I don't think so.
They should.
I mean, if they're going to a school, it is tuition.
So the SAP only covers bachelor's or associate's degrees in their tuition reimbursement policy. Right. That's what normally, if this was for an associate's degree, it would be under the personnel board's budget under the tuition reimbursement. So they're trying to get people with a Class A, but if they have to train somebody, it's a lot more expensive now. So Karen adjusted the real numbers that move for inflation. But we don't know, and then the rest of them, she basically kept flat because she can adjust her budget, kind of, she's pretty comfortable that she has some wiggle room in there. But the ones that she knew was definitely going to go up, like supplies and sand and gravel.
What are service supplies for $20,000?
I have no idea.
It's a lot of money for a generic line item.
And what's the intermunicipal stormwater? Not a lot of money. I just don't know what it is. So.
It's maybe for our the annual cost for our stormwater permit. I have no idea.
Okay.
It's the same every year. That makes it easier.
Like to know what it is. That's all.
Yeah.
Like to learn something new every day. So.
Yeah. So overall, it's about 6%. But we could dig into that more on Saturday.
I like the deduction in overtime. Any idea how we achieve that?
So it's you have to add these two lines together.
Oh, I see. She broke out the
She broke it up between ice,
for
ice
snow
and
plow
snow.
for snow plows and general overtime.
Exactly. That helps us with our snow and ice budgeting to
Mhm.
make sure we break it out. The last year, like it was 150, and this year
Yeah.
it's 170.
Yeah. So where it's not filled on the percentage up should actually
Correct. We should add these
go
two
up
together.
quite a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Other ones. Hold on, let me pull up the other ones. And then Marcy and I also met with Pam on Council on Aging. Pull their budget up.
And they have two, right? With
Yeah, one with the outreach and one without the outreach. And there's a good letter if people haven't read it.
yep, I read it.
Pam wrote. Select board is allowing them, so that person is the extra hours a person's working right now,
Mhm.
using the grant money that they get. So select board giving them permission to do that. There is an understanding that they understand that, that's going to go back if we don't vote it, right? But what they're looking to do is like we've always said, they don't want to keep, salaries and personnel in grants. They would like it to be in the operating budget and use the grant for one-time things or programming,
Mhm.
which, I certainly agree with. Share the screen. So yeah, so the overall 10% is almost all for that. Let me just pull up the other one too, so we can toggle back and forth. Yeah, so the regular salary is 3.6%. And so it's just basically those extra 8 hours for the outreach coordinator, who I guess has been very busy and And the senior population keeps growing and growing, which I understand Pam's going to come with some statistics for us on Saturday. So if we have questions in terms of, how is that going with the extra 8 hours right now, or how many calls or outreaches can she do more? We can cover that off there. It's not a huge dollar amount. It's about 306, about 16,000. And then employee training and seminars was she was attending an additional there's a Mass Council on Aging thing that they've gone to in the past, but haven't because of COVID. And I think it's a recurring thing we're seeing where there was
Department
training
by
and
department.
seminars and things that people hadn't gone to in years that are now coming back because of COVID
What
dying down.
Years, column B,
What did you say?
column B, 2020.
Yep.
But, people use the COVID reason. That's great. But I'm not seeing 2,400 in previous columns. Why is it so much?
They're looks like they're trying to catch up from, if they send one person a year, people are trying to send.
Is that the reason?
So
They're gonna
it's
send
MCOA conference.
But it's 5 people by 380.
So I think it was Tim, and that year they probably put it against it says employee training 1750. They probably put it against the grant instead of their salaries, instead of their budget.
Got it.
If I had to guess, I think they did that. Yeah, I think that's what she said. That was probably in the grant. That's where, and that's something, guys, I think for the summer, I really want to get our hands around is this stuff that's paid for in grants and then moves into operating budgets. And I really want an accounting of all of the expenses, whether or not it's general fund, grants, anything, so that we have a handle on how much people are spending that we're going to be, possibly on the hook of for if the grant disappears, and knowing what the revenue generation is for these areas. But it's not something we're going to get anytime right now. Here's postage, mostly just the increase in postage costs, printing, roughly inflation, I would say, extra $100. Programming, again, it's always around the same dollar amount, just kind of fluctuates which programs they do. Contracted services flat. Office supplies, I would say that's inflation, $50 extra. Same supplies, $50 extra. Supplies. And then conference, Tim. And state travel. So let me jump back over here. So it's really it's really the 8%, or it's extra 8%, sorry. The extra 8 hours plus the conferences, which is roughly 4,000, whatever it is what makes up Council on Aging's budget. And this is where philosophically, I have trouble dinging Pam for wanting to go to a Mass Council on Aging and bring 5 employees at whatever, $600-700 a pop or whatever it is. What is it? So
No, yeah, the hours
$200 a night for a hotel, and I think it's $380 for the conference. So
I think the hours are a much bigger driver here.
yeah, so $580 to do a training seminar for a department that does a lot with little, and we give $750 I think to every police and fireman to do training. So that's tough. That's where it gets tricky when you look at it. Is the equality of what we give each individual employee, which I think is another thing that might be a summer agenda item, is to look at training and by employee, by area, look at some of the equity of that. But that's probably more in the selectmen's purview than ours, but I think it's certainly something to be looked at.
But I agree. I think, it's not a lot of money at this one budget, but it seems to be a theme across each
Correct.
department. And when you do that, and it starts adding up to an amount to look at when you do it across the board. I don't know if there's a recommendation to a policy, maybe all 5 don't need to go. Maybe it's 3 this year and 3 next year, or whatever it is, in each department. Not, and I'm not singling this one out, just I was viewing it on the screen. Again, there's a theme across everyone that, hey, we're back, we should get back into training, which I'm all for training. But maybe there's an opportunity to, some people in person, some people online, and then rotate it annually.
Yes.
And I know my company does a lot of that kind of stuff too, and it makes sense. So just to get the overall training budget, because I think if you look at it across the board, it's a bigger number than just if you look at it department by department. So.
Yeah, and I think, Howard, the biggest driving factor is the training dollars spent in the union contracts. Right. So that's what I'm saying, like having making it equal for SAP and union employees is an important thing.
Unfortunately, we're not involved in the negotiation of those contracts because there's a whole other set of points we could have, looked at as well.
I think Sam's listening, so I'm hoping he took that note.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is this an opportunity where it forces these, whoever's negotiating these or deciding on how they want to allocate funds within their department budget, if no one wants to make a tough decision or force someone to make a tough decision, like how many people do I send to a conference for training, or put in a contract with a union versus how much can I spend on a program or a recreational activity? Of course we want to do it all, but the reality is if we're targeting a level set, you do have to make those tough trade-offs. So I don't know, if we keep on sort of saying this little amount is not enough to kind of push outside of the kind of level set target budget, or this is already in the contract, so we don't have wiggle room on that. But okay, that means we have to find where we do have wiggle room. And like Howard said, every company is going through this. My company is doing it too. So everyone's making tough choices, and the town shouldn't be held to any different type of a standard there.
Yeah, and I agree. What I'm trying to avoid, and this is probably what goes back to Tim's point of having the discussion with selectmen on Saturday, is killing the SAP budgets because the union contracts. Yeah, right. I mean, they've gone up 7%, so these guys have to go down, right? And just how do I mean, we can do that, like if we can artificially just say, we're contractually, or we can, whatever. But it's a slippery slope. I just don't want to ding everybody that's within our control because we're trying to get to a number unfairly, unless we come to that agreement that that's how we have to handle it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it's consistent, if every department has to put forth a budget that is only increased by X amount, and we know what that looks like, and then, like we've said all along, we decide on what the overages are.
Correct.
And so
I'm saying, like, there's some budgets that I don't think you can get down to that target because of the contract that's already been signed.
Right, you might not be, but you might also be making assumptions that there's not somewhere else that is under their control.
Yeah.
No one's going to want to take that down.
Correct.
But I guess what we should be looking at is what would we have to remove to get it to be level set with those contractual obligations being met, and then we decide as a team with the select board. We want to allow that department to go over. We can't live without the whatever it is, the recreational activities that make up that 43,000. If we were to drop that down to 40,000, what we're missing is not palatable. So
Yep. No, I agree. I just, I think it's making sure that we look at it all together.
yeah,
And it's a fair point of, the fairness, but there's also the fairness of getting the budget where it needs to go for the taxpayer too. And we have limited control. Like I said, there's certain contracts, which, frankly, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for those negotiations next time, because, that's where I'd really like to see some trimming, but we have no control over that. So,
right. I think we at least should have the view of what it would look like.
Yeah. But I think that's how where I'm trying to come at it with is, I don't want a nickel and dime, somebody like the Council on Aging over training, when from a taxpayer perspective, to move the needle, their entire budget can't get the budget percent down to
Right.
right. So
I
it's
agree
like
with that.
we
And
need
I'm
the
not against
schools,
training.
we need police, we need fire,
Mhm.
these are the ones that we can actually make an impact on. Really, the schools are the schools 70% of our budget.
Right.
Um,
And I'm not against training. I think training and future training and continued training is a good thing, and eventually can bring costs down with proper training. But I also, we put out an original mandate for, to see a budget at a certain level, and frankly,
Yeah.
that's low hanging fruit compared to,
yeah, no, I
we're not
agree.
going to change salaries, and I don't want to cut people. I'd rather,
Yeah. And I
So-
think we should have in our heads we've had these discussions on different budgets, right? We've had a few
Mhm.
different things that are like, hey, what about this? Do you really need that? That doesn't look like level service, right? And those are the things where we can make a list and say, this is what we feel that what fat we could cut.
right.
Um,
Right, granted, like we're looking at, Council of Aging right now, it's not it's not a lot of money we're talking about, like I said, for that training, but I think it's just that general statement, it makes it fairer.
correct.
That's all I'm saying, so.
Yep, agreed. All right. That's all I had for major budget updates. What else do we have here? I think that's basically all I really wanted to cover, except for we have all the you guys have seen the list of the departments that we'll have and the agenda we have on Saturday.
It's busy.
It's gonna be a long day. I know they're bringing lunch in, I think breakfast too, but so we should have some fun.
The only thing I ask is coffee, or I'll just bring my own and, intravenously tap it in or something.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I believe Kathy's bringing some Dunkin' or something. A couple boxes of Joe.
Joe is fine.
And a straw.
There's a couple boxes. What are you guys having? That's
Yeah.
what
Tim, were you on the committee last time they did the Saturday meeting?
I don't ever recall a Saturday meeting.
Okay. I think Kathy might have done it early in her tenure, but I think she was here a little before you. But should be interesting to see what the format is. So I'm interested to hear from you guys whether or not you think you like that versus having, multiple long night meetings, or whether or not go back to our old format. All right. You guys have anything else you want to cover off on?
Has there been any more, excuse me, discussion around the new software for youth and family services and where we stand on that?
Not that I know of. I mean, I think it's just it's in their budget, and in terms of any HIPAA piece, I think we need to see. I mean, we brought it up with Jay. Tim, you were there, but in terms of whether or not it is or isn't, or
Yeah, it's all well and good for the service to be HIPAA compliant, but there's a lot more that goes into it, right?
Yep.
Laptops are not HIPAA compliant today, so it's just too bad that this will be the first time there's a conversation had around it because it's going to be a busy day, but c'est la vie.
All right. Public comment. Sam, have anything? All right. Anything else, guys? All set?
Till Saturday.
All right. I'll see you all Saturday. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Howard,
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
Adam.
Aye.
And
Aye.
Andrew. Aye.